Okay, we'll call a meeting.
Send it to the board.
We have a quorum. God, we're going here. We have a quorum, reading and approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
I read both of the minutes and I moved to approve them.
Additions, comments, corrections. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Bills, communication. Nicely.
Okay, we've got several bills on it today. One is a NYSEG bill for the Eagle Drive electricity. That was $53.57. We paid $1,500 to CCBC for a fee for the loan, and then we also paid our first month of the interest. There'll be 12 monthly payments sent, so we've done the first payment on that, and those are due the first of the month every month. GoDaddy, we have two domains, one's a .org and one's a .com. We paid $41 for an annual renewal of those two domains. Napa Electric, their invoice was for the repairs that were needed to the electrical equipment and Eagle Drive. And the cost of that was $459.06. We included the bill from CETA for the second quarter of the year, which is $7,500. There was an additional $146, which was primarily, I'm sorry, $160, which primarily was postage. We sent letters out to Maureen was sending out letters of interest to various people that we haven't had contact with recently. That was the main postage that was. And then we have our final audit from Danable and McKee, which is sort of the second half of the total audit, plus there was an additional $200 for some extra journal entries that had to be made. So that bill was for $4,200, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was $4,200. So those are all the bills we have in there this time.
Motion to pay the bill.
So I'll second it. I do have a question.
Okay. Motion made, seconded, discussion.
The CCDC money, John, is that invested in something so we're getting part of the interest?
Invested in CCDC monies here.
I-
Oh, yeah, you mean,
We're paying monthly interest on it, and I'm trying to ask if it's where we're getting at least some interest.
Some of that park in the.
money markets, or it wouldn't be a CD, what did we put it?
It's just sitting and checking right
Right now it's in checking, yeah.
And one of the
Okay.
things we're gonna do is we're gonna be setting up a separate account so we can track all payments and refunds towards the sewer project.
I suppose we could, Herb. The reality is that hopefully we start spending it. But no, to answer your question, I don't believe it's earning any interest right now.
I would think that amount of money we ought to put someplace so we're getting at least something back towards the interest we're paying on it until we need to use it.
Sure.
Thanks, John.
I just shifted some money around KeyBank on my sister's account. And they were paying interest on checking account. Business account.
They're giving earnings credit, but not interest on a checking. You can't pay interest on a business.
It was some kind of a,
You work with them to get that, it should be John. Thank you.
further discussion. Are the lights all working out there?
The phone.
The no plan.
Yeah, they're working.
Okay.
We did,
Just read it.
yeah, I'll just add on to that, we did, because Napa Electric, aside from addressing the immediate lights that were out, and made put together a proposal to replace all the lights in the park and make them all LED. It's in excess of $16,000 right now, so I can share that proposal once, we wrap up the meeting here, but just an FYI, everyone as it is.
I think as we conclude our business with the transferring the land and everything in Mill Plant, we should transfer the lighting over to one building. I don't, personally, I don't know why we're in the weapons business. But
You have any comments on that, Mark? Works. The company itself is building a plant. That the lights should go over to us too, if we buy the land.
Lights.
For the park.
they won't have to discuss it now.
Yeah, I think we need to, yeah.
The ones that are in the right of way, that's being, is part of the project, I would say.
We can work on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, we have to worry about people like space and everything. You're gonna own almost all of the property. Another time,
Okay.
we'll shake you down later. Further discussion on bills. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried, reported treasurer.
Okay, we have a positive bottom line for through May of $2,592.44. Which, when you compare it to the budget for this year so far, we were anticipating a negative, so that's not too bad. There wasn't a lot of activity this month. We did get the pilot money from the Finger Lakes Railroad, which we dispersed. $4,000 of that was our fee, so that was basically our income for the month, plus some interest from the gas lease and the savings account. And the only expenses that we paid so far through the end of May was the fee for the loan that we took out. The interest payment that we made was on June 1st, so that won't show up until the next treasurer's report. But otherwise, there weren't a whole lot of expenses that happened before the end of May.
Motion, approve the treasurer.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded, discussion for the treasurer. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. I'll amend this, and since we got some important people here, we'll switch right down to cubic milk ingredients unless somebody has a different opinion.
Oh, good idea.
Sure, we have two agenda items today, primarily for each of Eagle Drive Holdings and Cuban Milk Ingredients. I printed some maps and then your meeting materials, they're in the clip. Just kind of contrast their plans in 2022 that they came to us initially with and how the park was going to be subdivided. And then maps that show what they have proposed now. The email I sent around yesterday kind of outlined the top level differences. But couple of the diagrams kind of give you a sense of scale.
If you want.
Whichever you want to start, the colored one with the orange is probably most descriptive, yeah. Their original plans involved, yeah.
Not that.
That's the current plan right now.
Not that one. Hold on, Doug.
Yep.
No. Okay.
Lots of paper. Good job.
This one. There you go.
That's what we're looking at now.
C3, yeah, overall site plans, map C-3.0. Okay, yeah.
The original plan last year, as they had engineered it, involved around 130,000 square feet of new building space located very close, if not touching the existing milk plant, we can see in the center of the page. The new plan involves almost 225,000 square feet situated a little bit set back from the existing plant. And the overall footprint, there's another map or two in here that will show that they're incorporating a good deal more acreage from the CMI existing 24 acres, which will be pulled over to Eagle Drive Holdings. And the real estate differences, the big difference, and it really isn't a huge one, is that the Eagle Drive leg, if you will, that runs north to south on the west side of the plant. It was originally supposed to be transferred, ultimately included in the Eagle Drive Holdings assemblage. Now half of it roughly is going into Milk Ingredients for their assemblage. And then the southern half will be incorporated into the tax plot that Eagle Drive Holdings is assembling at around 35 acres all in. The net assemblage for Eagle Drive Holdings is at around 35 acres. Will be compared to what you see now with Cuba Milk Ingredients. Their assemblage inside the park be around 18 acres plus the new 10 acres that they're acquiring for lot 4. So those are the big differences. The project went from around $130 million for Eagle Drive Holdings to over 180, almost $185 million, which is double the investment they put in 2012. And the biggest thing that's come through Cuba County since I've been coming here. So,
Oh, that's great.
yeah, it's
Pretty
an
exciting.
amazing investment. Yeah. So,
Justin, I found some fault with some of the things you've done recently, that's because I find fault, but you did a wonderful job getting this all together and ready for us so we could review it yesterday in preparation for the meeting. You got so much stuff that I couldn't possibly have gone through all of it, but that's
Yeah.
wonderful that you could get that done.
No, very good.
yeah, I appreciate it. It's easy to look at it than talk about it. And I talk about vague little half acre moving here and there. It's easier to look at it. And then having the CEO here certainly doesn't hurt to describe what they've got planned. The other major difference between what they were looking at in the end of 2022 and now is that the sewer treatment elements that were going to sit on the Cuba Milk assemblage are now going to be built and managed by the Eagle Drive entity. So that moved a little bit, and to dovetail into the Cuba Milk project, which was around 16 million before, primarily sewer and water and some light trucking, are now no longer sewer and water and a much more robust trucking depot across the street on lot 4. So that project lands around 12 million-ish, 13 million. It's still a big investment in Cuba County. That's not small. So
And you put a building on, so that's what,
I think eventually for truck maintenance.
Yeah.
Drivers, kind of like the rest.
This treatment facility that's treating in-house their material, getting ready to put into the sewer line. That's what you're doing. There was a discussion a long time ago about the possibility of you putting in some type of a line to put clean water, but that's got nothing to do with what you're planning right now.
Correct. This is.
This is
To
the,
oversimplify it, this is a pre-treatment plant. To go into the municipal system.
okay, yeah, that's,
That's a very gross oversimplification of this thing.
that's what my question was, that's fine.
pull out some bonds and tods and send it in so the city can clean the rest.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are the bigger differences. They went quickly into the town planning board in the last month because of their schedule and their desire, I believe, and they can speak to it better than I can, to basically be shovel ready by Labor Day-ish, depending on where meeting schedules fall. And we're certainly able to stay on that schedule with them. Today's exercise is literally just catching up the IDA application to fit their new plans for both the CMI and EDH. And there's minor adjustments within the contracts that we have with them to sell the land. We're just describing the project a little differently to fit the size. And then we're jumping the land assemblage a little bit so it fits.
There was a discussion at the special meeting. If they had adequate title to the land that it's going to be, this addition is going to be on to satisfy the planning board, is that a problem?
Yeah, that was before our last meeting. The late last year, the county provided what's called the joinder letter. Our LDAs are a joinder letter for everything we own, IDA owns, and then the county owns the 1.09 acre Eagle Drive strip. Some of that got adjusted a little bit, and there was a question of whether the town attorney was gonna be super picky and say, well, the county letter doesn't match exactly. But he said they're fine, right before the meeting, so it didn't force us to act super fast, so we had the benefit of the last 3 weeks to kind of get ready, and so you guys could look at this intelligently and kind of absorb the adjustments that they have. For purposes of today, all the resolution asks the board to do is accept their updated application and then authorize the adjustment for each of the land contracts. Pretty simple. As they move through the town planning board for both projects. In the background, with your help and with Michael's kind of leadership, we'll be working with their attorneys and with the milk on how each of the pilots are going to work. With the goal of, as soon as they're targeting their last town planning board meeting, which I think based on discussions with Brian just now, maybe in the August window. We'd be ready to schedule the IDA's public hearings in August to kind of just disclose how the pilots are going to work and how the benefits will work. And as soon as they're through seeker and town site plan, this board can adopt the 2 final project authorizing resolutions and we're ready to go.
Today you have taken the lead and secret.
Yeah, they're the lead agency, so we're kind of waiting for them to take their action, and as soon as they do, we can say me too and do our bit, so.
So today you want us to approve this new application. I would move that we approve the new application. We can still have discussion on it, but I think that's the proper procedure.
So this is the prepared authorization resolution.
Yeah, there's
that
2 resolutions.
Yes,
in
that
the back.
Justin prepared.
You
Okay.
wanna, Rick, you wanna give us a brief on resolution?
Well, Justin prepared the authorization resolution. He just described it. And there's also an amended land development agreement, amendment number 1 agreement that we're looking for authorization to authorize, I believe it's gonna be for the LDA, I think, who signed that?
I signed that.
And Mr. Miller
Teed up
signed that,
for
Yep.
Michael and for Brian to, and you can do that at your leisure, we're not, don't have that big ceremony. or anything like that.
Back to you.
I would include both of those in the resolution.
Okay. Which we did in a minute. Discussion. Comment.
On discussion, was talking to Paul earlier today. He had a question and I thought Justin could answer it about the labor policy, so I didn't want to step on Justin's toes, but.
Sure.
So, Paul, you about local labor, and I
Yeah.
mentioned that our labor
He brought
policy.
something we were
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and it just in general, this IDA has a local labor policy with a preference for county-based labor force. And then some latitude and ability for projects to draw from your entire economic development region, which I think is 6 or 7 counties. And beyond that, if a company, and we've had focus on that recently with solar projects, which
Various requests, yeah.
yeah, they draw project labor and their constructors, their erectors, if you will, are drawn from, you know, they come from Pennsylvania or Virginia or wherever. So they have a tougher time fitting into the policy. I would let Hugo Milk and EDH folks talk about who they're selecting for a design build or who they're utilizing for. And see, that's really where the rubber hits the road in terms of where they're going to draw their labor force from.
For building the building. Okay.
Yeah.
That Mark Sunland is the president of Structura.
Yeah, so our intent is certainly the labor force around this area, the lead local contractors, and then there are gonna be some specialty groups that come in that maybe that we don't have the local labor here, so we'll be coming in from out of state, but for the most part, the actual building portion, then the intent is to use the local labor.
When you say local, you mean within 6 counties?
Yeah, primarily Cayuga and then the Central New York Economic Development Region Council, which you're probably familiar with.
Our policy has always been to try to get people that we provide pilots for, to get as many people from our county as you can, knowing that some of your projects like to go out. But that part of the reason we exist is to create jobs within.
Yeah, we have a percentage. Like, what is it?
Yeah, the policy has a breakdown of the immediate local percentage and then moving into the region. And to the extent that your building footprint or your construction workforce, if you will, doesn't necessarily exactly fit into that. There's a waiver process that you can bring to the board and just outline how your labor demographics gonna work.
Okay.
Given the scale of this one, I think there'll be a little bit of latitude as long as the IDA knows and generally can broadcast, the construction side of it, and then your local jobs. I think you have 94 you're sitting on, and you're gonna go to
At least 80.
yeah, another 80, I think,
Mhm.
inside the bottling plant, and maybe 2 or 3 more over on the other side. So
Well, that was mostly like lot 4. We're gonna add some folks and we were looking at wastewater with some, so. In general, I think, Mark, you're picking the contractors and all. But once the contractors pick, then they pick their subs and what percent, what is the percent that we have to look for? Is that in the LDA or what is that?
it's in the.
It's actually in the application packet is our labor policy. I
That's right,
I didn't print off a copy of it at that time.
If someone has the application.
The application that I turned in last week or a couple weeks ago. I didn't remember seeing actual percentages. We can speak about that to follow policy, but it's okay.
Next to the back.
Okay,
Yeah, we can send that to you or
Yeah,
I think it's on our website too, because it's part of the application packet for big projects, but.
If there's a delta or spread, I think it's just easily articulated and the board, obviously it's their discretion, but that could be brought to them. In that August cycle, and we could just,
Okay.
make sure that everybody's good with it. Just so on audit, there isn't like a delta somewhere that people didn't, take care of.
okay.
Just from the past projects, you haven't had an issue.
Well, I don't think we're gonna have an issue.
No.
I mean, they're pretty much.
I think it's
the
I think it's for all around
Who's it
for
for
that to happen, so.
Keep the owner of Scriptura and their project manager and.
Okay.
Glenn and hired all
Sure, that's nice. Just didn't know who he was.
of. Mark Bellin, he's here instead of Chip. He was.
Good. Thank you for coming.
He's Chip's boss.
That's even better. Okay,
Important project.
further discussion on the,
In my brief looking over all of your stuff, I was wondering if are we anywhere near to a decision on what road work they're gonna need. To get to lot 4 or to improve lot.
That's a good point. And I circulated an email separate from the 2 main project emails that focuses on. It's a question that just came up in the last week, and that in deference to the board, ultimately, it's a policy question on. What you want done with the right of way from Eagle Drive running west or east to Ellis Drive. If you look at this one, this map here in your file. This is the lot 4 site plan as it exists today, the most recent draft. That Jared Lusk had shared with me. If you look at the overall footprint, the top of the map. Shows well, it's a 4 corners, but it looks like 3 right now. As you're running east, that's the gravel driveway that heads over 5,000 feet to hit Ellis Drive, much to the east of here. So this is the first 600 or 700 feet. Yeah, so I was doing the math a minute ago trying to figure out the acreage, but
And you said this is lot 4?
yeah, the lot 4 primarily and this site plan, if you will, moves up into our right of way, the roadway that the IDA owns just to the north of lot 4. There's also a map in here.
But you mentioned going all the way to Ellis Drive or something.
No, it's just going north to the edge of our right of way. If they
okay.
wanted to use this as their primary trucking driveway.
Yes,
Sure,
but
why
that's
not?
got nothing to do with the rest of that right away.
No,
All
That's
the
right.
way to the east.
that's correct. Depending on how we handle it as the board and how you would decide to manage that. What I had called out or what I had noted to Jared was the IDA owns that right of way in fee title just north of lot 4. Right now, it has a town-owned right of way for the gravity line in it. We are in the process of hopefully building quickly a force main line through there that has above ground generators and a pump station, lift station right at the 4 corners, if you will.
Yeah.
That sits inside of the right of way. And then maybe there's a water line there someday. You can get all the way to water, or all the way to Auburn, yeah.
We need to look at the whole picture before we start
Right.
dividing up that right away.
Right, so the question that I just posed was. the trucking throughput and because of the wetlands, the way that they're situated on this lot, it makes a lot of sense for them to be able to use that right away.
Certainly.
But how do we get there? Do we transfer it to the county as another chunk of Eagle Drive public road? Do they want to get into the road business again when the roads are shifting a little? It's a question for the political leadership to get into. But it's more between Mark and I think the company's engineers to. If you're gonna build a heavy trucking driveway over that, is it okay to do it over water sewer and then you got NYSEG above? What makes the most sense?
Yes, somebody needs.
Someone needs to
do the
figure it out.
engineering for
Yeah.
that and make it so that it works and what kind of a roadway you need, you
Where it
don't
sits.
want it paved and.
Yeah, so it's a question that the town planning board's gonna have to address in some capacity. And for site plan and the county board of legislators, if they want to get into this part of it, that's a question that would have to go through them and. Ultimately, if they're just gonna build this pursuant to an easement that we give them, that's the easiest thing, probably.
Is it possible to have that all together so that when they get through with their, I believe, August meeting with the planning board? It says not going to be necessary to have an additional meeting.
Right.
with the planning board.
I think we can forge ahead with the assumption, this is just my idea, that. In addition to or as part of the deed to lot 4 that we're gonna transfer to them, that they just get a very strong and detailed easement that allows them to use that part of the right of way. Maybe that makes sense.
And that should resolve any problems with the Aurelius planning.
I would think so, as long as they have an understanding and comfort level. At this point, I wouldn't want to jump ahead and presume that the county's gonna take this. Until we've had that conversation, and certainly there's people in this room that can start that conversation and get it going in the right direction.
Yes.
We have a representative from county planning with us today. Mr. Lynch. So that's.
Either easement versus.
Yeah, so just what we did from let's say a worst case scenario is we put in there a county road, 30-foot wide pavement. The existing gravel road isn't centered in that right of way, so we kind of gotta go, if we were to do a 30-foot road, we can use some of the gravel that's there now, and then some of it, we'd have to put in some things and all that good stuff. If we were to go with a driveway over an easement, we could narrow that up. I did Justin sent along the plans for the forest main. And I don't know, so.
He's got a yellow line.
There's a yellow line on here, and I'm sorry, I only have like 8 copies. But
Yeah. The yellow dotted line.
yeah, that's just on the edge of. The edge of pavement and we're not doing a whole lot of earthwork in there. As far as scraping off the earth. But based on the profile I saw, there's plenty of cover. As far as, so the pipe's not gonna be flush, right? My tractor trailer could have to go over it. But if we were to narrow that up in an easement where it's not a county road, so it's 24-foot wide, to allow two-way traffic versus a 30-foot county road. We keep that force main out of the width of the pavement. So it gives us a little more flexibility if it stays IDA property and then the IDA.
But they're already looking at how to do this and.
Yeah, it's an engineering question. What does it mean?
Yeah, I can't see but what that will work, especially, it sounds like they're willing to put some of their money into doing the road improvement and. Oh,
It'll help security on that road for the IDA in terms of having, a back gate could go in there and lock that road down a little bit better if it's in the back of their lot.
Yeah.
And they would have certainly the lighting and profile there to, you don't have the gypsy garbage truck going down there with couches or that kind of thing. Ultimately having it improved is an advantage and if either the county or the IDA stay in fee title one way or the other, there isn't a landlocked roadway back there between Ellis Drive to the back of lot 4. It would keep some continuity, long term, depending on what the IDA wants to do with that. It's really a utility corridor now, for all intents and purposes. It's a place to throw down big pipes.
yes.
So,
The 24-foot seems reasonable.
And we'll take a little bit of the cost down in terms of what you're doing to improve it, as long as it fits your truck profiles, then.
Yeah, we might have to tweak the driveways,
Sounds like it.
just to, for the turning
Swing,
radius, but
yeah.
yeah, but the 24-foot width, there's. Many benefits other than just obviously the cost. I mean, there's environmental benefits from reduced impervious area, stormwater, that's the big one. It needs to be paved so that they can obviously maintain it in the wintertime.
Sure.
But, when they, Cuba Marketing first came to us, the assumption was this would be a county road that would eventually get turned over, but if it's just a private driveway over an easement, and that's the type of thing where for a future water line, there's, more agreements about the restoration of the driveway.
I don't see any problem with working. it
Either
out.
either way is fine. I just, we would have to pull the county in quick to make sure that they're comfortable with the concept, which is, I think everyone supports the project. This is just trying to figure out where we're rounding the edges.
Yes.
Right.
Where we are with the town is, our first planning board meeting, it would be in July 11th. They haven't,
You're
This
your
year's
second
this.
planning.
no, for lot 4,
Oh, sure, yeah.
just for lot 4. I mean,
We presented the building, but not.
we did the beverage plant last month.
This is separate owner, separate application. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it just, only so many hours in a day. So,
I just got a quick question, and I know this is just a concept, like everything was the initial topic, is there any way to move this road further to the north? The intersections where they line up, I know they line up across from each other, but is there any way that, because the way that this is laid out, it's. All these structures are gonna be under the pavement area, some of these are huge structures.
yeah, we could certainly, I mean, again, we were just trying to line it up with the intersection.
Yeah.
But if it's a driveway, we can push it.
Okay, I'm just.
Yeah. And that also kind of eliminates, if it's a driveway, I can now crown it one way versus having it crowned in the center going both ways. Because then I gotta worry about drainage on both sides, whereas if it's just a driveway versus a county road, so there's a whole. Leaving it as a driveway through an easement, there's a lot more flexibility on the engineering.
Yeah. I imagine there's some bollards and all kinds of stuff you need to go around the sewer infrastructure and the generator, so. Keeping the trucks a little bit to the north of that might be better for swing.
Oh, absolutely.
All drivers aren't perfect.
Well, that's why there's a lot of space on site, because the drivers aren't perfect, but yeah, if.
Well, it gets snow and ice there too.
Yeah, there might be some push up from plows and stuff like that.
The sense I'm getting is. Kind of move forward with it, so we'll. Push it further to the north to get it away from the force main. As best we can and shorten it or narrow up the width of pavement.
So, just so I'm clear, we would give the right of way, but we would not be the ones that pay for the sealing it and putting the blacktop on it.
Haven't gotten that far in yet.
So that's what you start with, and then just.
We're
work
making
your
the
way
sausage as we speak right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
I think this discussion shows that we're not gonna.
if the county were to take it over, that answers this question. But yeah, I think we just need to make sure that they're comfortable with the concept. I mean, they were nice enough to take care of the Eagle Drive as it sits now, as opposed to a town doing it for whatever reason at the time. So it's just a question that the board members that have relationships with the county can
If
help
the
with.
county takes it over, you're gonna have to respect the whole deal. I mean, they're gonna. If they put the road in. Gonna be spec'd up.
Well, the Cuba Mill could put the road into their standards and dedicate it, and they would accept it, so it wouldn't go through the county budget. Just ultimately, the county would inspect it for it and then say we're okay. But then at that point, once the county accepts it, it would be on the county to take care of maintenance and
You're right.
that kind of stuff, which I think they have an arrangement with the town about, I think, if I remember how it works exactly, so. I'm not sure how much the county, Steve might know, I don't know how much the county really is actively involved in Eagle Drive other than ownership. Is there any maintenance or?
I think the town is maintaining it through an agreement with the county right now.
And the intermunicipal agreement
Yes, and, one consideration you might want to put on the table is, there has always been talk about connecting Route 326 to Half Acre. I know it's always been, you know, a real challenge and an obstacle.
2 people gotta die before it ever happens.
Well, they're old. You know, it doesn't mean that it might not happen, you know, 5, 10 years from now. The reason that might be important is it keeps the truck traffic coming up from the farms in the south. Without having to go through the commercial corridor in front of Astro and so on. That's all true. My only consideration, I would.
Let's send them west in a less impactful way. It'll go go past our friends at the Waynes and keep going west.
Well, there might be a way to put in a driveway that doesn't forestall that opportunity in the future.
That's living in an ideal world.
It started in the 90s, didn't it?
Any further discussion?
You had one of the signatures for a land development agreement in November. Is that soon enough?
The original one was signed back in November, and this board is approving 2 amendments today, and they can be signed today, tomorrow.
So it's not, it's coming with November, it was the November, if that was.
Yeah, we did.
I didn't understand that.
Yeah. But once that's in place, we're really just hoping the town goes as fast as we possibly can, and we can work with you guys on the rest of the details on pilot again.
The only other thing I think maybe we could bring up, they talked at one of the meetings that they were at, getting permission possibly to do some, not building, but construction work, van moving and stuff. If that's still something they want to do, Justin, you need to get together a plan on how we can make that a bit.
Yeah, we could amend the LDA, and we did it, I think it was with you guys or it was Grover.
No, they did it with us.
Yeah.
I was told.
So we.
We had the same situation where we used to get things.
Yeah, on the original plan, we did that.
Yeah.
I'm
People
sure
think
we
so
did.
far, in 30 days, I get nervous, yeah.
In fact, Steve did it.
I think so, yeah, when we give them some license rights to go out and do some earthwork.
Yeah.
Scraping and kind of moving stuff around, stockpiling topsoil and riprap probably, or some things.
Is that when you part of the LDA?
Yeah, the license in the LDA now, it says you can go in and test and poke and do all the things you need to do.
Right.
We could just amend the LDA to say you can not only just test and poke, you go push dirt and stockpile and.
And that was, you know, gonna potentially bring with me, so maybe you just email it to me after those amendments are done.
Okay, if the board is comfortable with the LDA amendment, including license rights that are expanded to include site work that is with a SWIP. We can make a motion for that and I can take care of that. That makes sense. Okay. What about it?
It's all right. Jared Lusk, I think, is listening. I don't know if Jared can talk this. Have you heard all that, Jared? He wasn't sure if he could, he's listening.
Is he smiling?
He's not even on
That is
the.
camera.
Any further discussion?
Okay, I thought he might have some too, but.
If you have 2 motions, if you just want to amend them to include the license provisions.
I would amend them to include that.
That way you don't have to wait a month.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So that would mean that.
If you're gonna give them
What time?
a proceed, then they can start.
When did they start?
Will not be amended first, and then
Let's get this signed up. I gotta-
together.
So like,
Okay,
sometime in July.
motion,
Get it done next week.
Okay,
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
you gotta get your SWIP.
there's a motion and a second for the amendment.
We have to.
Does everybody understand the amendment?
Yes.
All in favor on the amendment? Carry. Back to the original motion as amended to include both resolutions. Both resolutions. At once. All right, we'll do that for a roll call, please, Mike.
Okay. Mr. Lattimore,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan Flesh,
Yes.
Mr. Lance Mitchell. Yes. Mr. Lockwood.
Yes.
Mr. Marshall.
Yeah.
Ms. Spino,
Yes.
Mr. Shea.
Yes.
All voting aye, carried, we'll build the plan.
Thank you.
You are.
And I can provide some
Steve?
minutes language to help adjust that.
Okay.
Yeah. Dave,
Mr. Lockwood, I just want the developers to understand that there, I believe we have soil borings for many of those parcels that they are not building on right now, that's needed.
Okay. You need those, Mark? Okay,
We'll hunt those down and get them to Michael.
great. Thank you.
I think they were doing a grid to bedrock last summer too, that.
There was a company that was gonna make trees at one point.
yes,
Oh geez, that's right.
she's talking about taking Eagle Drive. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You can hang around, we're gonna go eat into the. Oh, yeah, it was a lot of.
No, we're the one that says we're going. Thanks. Thank you. So you got an email to me?
Yeah, I'll work with you guys, yeah, we'll get that down,
Send
so
it to Jared.
face with Jared, we'll just get it updated and we'll go for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, my favorite subject, update on the sewer lines.
Okay, all the.
Someday I'm gonna come to one of these meetings, we're never gonna talk about sewer again.
never gonna talk about that
I don't know, I haven't listened to talk about for a while. It's not just a project, but anyway. No, the contracts that were executed by both IDA and Highlander. Have been submitted to the EDA for their review and approval.
When did they get submitted?
Early last week, I think it was. Yes. Along with the bonds, insurance information, after it was reviewed by, council and all that. I sent David Stevens an email this morning. I haven't heard back from him yet on, just kind of trying to grease the skids with it as much as possible to keep pushing it along. But I haven't heard anything back from him yet on that.
Because I chew all the time. At our special meeting, I thought we officially instructed you to send that out that afternoon or the next day. And my understanding is you waited almost 2 weeks to get the signature from the contractor to send it in, and I thought we were very specific that we didn't care anything about withholding, moving the withholding from 5 to 10%. And what we are doing, we're postponing the completion date on that sewer project to December or January, which could very well mean that they can't work in December or January. There's no way in the world we can give them permission to start work until sometime in July, if we can do it then. And I'm concerned that we screwed around with that 5 to 10% thing for a month. Now I'm chewing just that you have, for really no reason at all. And I'm somewhat upset that we held it up that long because of that. That's my.
So in reading the minutes, my understanding was that 5 or 10% was not what the holdup was.
Well, that.
So it was,
The agreement with the contractor agreed on that. By the time he agreed to it and all that, a couple of weeks went by, there's no doubt about that. Yes.
so it was a holdup.
A little bit, yeah.
John, it wasn't, there was 2 other issues. One of them, all of us decided to put off to later, and that is discussing with the contractor the 2 culverts that need to be put in on that road. But I think everybody agreed that didn't have to happen until after it was sent to the grant people. The other one was, and I hollered at Rick about, was approving the insurance on it.
Yeah.
And that was approved. That was approved in the time.
The day after the special meeting, after Mark had discussions with his general counsel on one issue, one type of insurance. And then that was resolved the day after the special meeting. That Tuesday afternoon, if I recall.
But we're at the point now, we can't go back and do things over again that I kind of thought we did wrong, but we're just waiting for the grant people to approve what you sent to them.
That's where we're at.
And you can immediately issue a start work order or whatever the right term is, as soon as you get that permission from the grant people.
That is correct. Once the green light is given by them, we can issue the notice to proceed
Yeah.
and get the contractor going and get, get them ordering materials and all that good stuff.
It's really important to do that because some of the equipment takes, my understanding, 6 months to get the generators and some of the equipment for the pump stations, as well as getting the stupid electric company to hook up the electricity to this.
Yeah, the pumps alone are probably 3 to 3.5 months out right now. And the generator, as you mentioned, the big ticket long lead item that can be.
That is in NICEAG, right? There's nothing we can do to move the
No,
NICEAG stuff.
We've gone where we've gone. The only thing, if we can get you to keep on them as much as you can, Mark, to get permission to go the next step with it.
I'll keep on.
Yeah, and I guess we just would like to proceed without delay.
Understand.
That may be all we have to do with sewer for today. Although Carl wanted, I think, to mention something about the culverts there.
Yeah,
We got Mark.
I don't, there was some talk earlier that the Norbert Energy people had filed a notice of claim about the culvert.
yes,
Has that moved forward at all?
They withdrew, well, they tendered it as a notice of claim. And then the county, well, interestingly enough, the county's insurance carrier covers this board as an affiliate. Kind of woke them up and they engaged with Norbert's counsel, who said, never mind. Not a
Okay.
notice of claim.
Okay,
So the carrier closed the file for now, whether or not anything more comes of it, I'm not sure. I
Well-
drove through there about an hour and a half ago and there's some water along the right of way there, so.
well, the reason I bring it up is I've had some discussion with the people from Norbert Energy. The
Hmm.
water authority is very interested in getting an easement across the old Wake Farm. And they seem to be very agreeable at this point to working out an agreement with us. Well, it would be with the IDA and with the water authority. That if that upper culvert was replaced, the one furthest to the west, which is a smaller culvert, if there was some engagement to get that replaced, they would start working towards giving us the easement we need to run a water line across the Wake property. That easement, whether the water line gets to the milk plant or not, is valuable every day.
Is there room in the right of way that runs from Ellis to the park for the water line as well?
Well, one of the things that we're trying to resolve here is the water authority moving forward is looking at a regional master plan. And the milk plant would be a substantial customer to help make that master plan financially viable.
Sure.
So we're in an odd way, we're trying to go around the city if we can. And we're in the process of on West Genesee Street putting in a 12-inch main. And we would like to extend off that 12-inch main into the IDA property.
Mhm.
And truthfully, it's not even totally about the city, because the city would still be supplying water for a long time to the milk plant.
Mhm.
But if our second source came to fruition on Cuba Lake, it would give us an opportunity to sell directly to the milk plant. And also, there's still another redundant line that the town of Reyes would have in the milk plant.
But the milk plant was very interested. Because if they lose water, the whole production.
Well, that's
They
probably-
wanted two
They
sources.
really wanted water from both directions, and the water line they have now is absolutely not adequate to handle their expansion. So that's why I question keeping that right away back to the east,
Right.
west, whatever, I don't know,
Runs east to Ellis, yeah. Is that valuable? Can we have 2 sewer lines and a water line in line?
I talked to Mark very thoroughly on that, and he says there's room there to put all 3 of them there presently.
Herb had us do just a run a quick check to see if there was proper separations and all that.
Right.
It can be done.
Yeah, usually you need 10 or 15 feet,
Yeah.
yeah, something like that.
But the problem for the water authority is that the existing IDA easement is adequate for supply from the city.
But you understand, we want to keep that open in case that's the only alternative we
Right.
have. And
Okay.
Carl is working with, and I think we already agreed to put both of those culverts underneath that road. And I think Mark was gonna try to talk with the contractor when we get to that point. But I think we've already got 4-foot culvert for the one that we already dug up. And I think we got 2-foot culvert for the other one.
Doug's got it,
Yes,
Yeah,
but
that's right. I had to turn around today. I got-
the culvert's a no-brainer.
I don't, no, I just,
I just bought 20 feet of culvert, it was under $300.
no, it's not expensive.
I could put it in with my blindfolded.
Right, my concern was I didn't want to further any discussions with the Norbert Energy people if there's any outstanding issues.
Right, I understand that.
So
what do we need to do to close the deal with Norbert on the right of way then?
I think in good faith and with a handshake, and I mean a handshake, I don't want any agreements on paper till we're right there that they'll give us the easement. But up until the time they sign the easement over, it's a handshake.
and as Ray says, we've already agreed to put both
Okay.
of those culverts in.
Okay.
We already have the pipe for the culvert. We were going to discuss with the contractor whether he was willing to do part of that while he's digging the
Right.
new sewer line or not. And if he's not, that's a very, very, very simple
That,
thing.
that upper culvert's very simple. So I guess I'm asking the IDA's permission to continue my conversations with Norbert Energy to acquire a right of way across the Wake Farm for a water line. And with the consideration that the trade-off would be is we would replace the upper culvert, as you said, you were agreeable to.
Regardless of your dealing, we're going to replace both culverts.
Okay, well, let's not put that out there just yet.
No, so, but that's what we have basically
Okay.
agreed to do.
So,
If you need some of Rick's time, go ahead.
so, well, I kind of have everyone's blessings here to consider,
Yeah.
continue my discussion.
If
Thank
somebody-
Let me ask
If
what,
somebody else, I can get Doug.
Yeah.
Oh, it's doable.
Absolutely, I mean, it's a phone call away.
Thank you.
We
want
do
to
them
get
all well.
into a water discussion, but. We couldn't go across the Bosse's property? To connect to
Part of it
the,
is both property.
It would be considerably less expensive to do that because to.
but if
go
you're coming off of Cayuga Lake, wouldn't that be closer?
To go to across the Bosse's property. With the line that we're doing, we have to go past another house and another piece of property to the Bosse's property.
But if you're coming in from the west,
If we're coming.
not from the east, not from the city, if you're coming in
If we're
from
coming,
Cayuga.
if we're coming from the city,
The pipe's gonna run from all the way to McDonald's.
From Cayuga, you gotta
the
pass Bosse's to get to the
Well,
Wake property.
problem,
There's houses there, so
you gotta
go this way, then this way, then this.
it's not even that so much. We might be 8 or 10 years out before we have our second source complete.
Yeah, a plant like that, that's surface water and you have treatment on it, yeah. that's-
Well, that would not be a problem. That's gonna be dealt with as part of the treatment plant. But truthfully, the milk plant is soon to realize, or the discussion is gonna be had, that it really can't supply them the water they need for their expansion.
Yeah.
So we're trying to be prepared to supply them with water
It's
needed.
not gonna break Aurelius's heart if they don't.
Right.
John, it would just save quite a few hundred feet. Piping if we went across the Wake property instead of going on past that development thing and then back to the line.
And actually, John, I'm working on a right away with both these two.
Okay.
I'm a belt and suspender guy. I'm gonna have a backup.
Hedge your bets. That's
Yep.
good. Yeah, that's a good plan.
Okay,
Thank you, gentlemen.
And that's the end of the sewer.
further. Okay. Rick, Doug Wayne. Doug was gonna be here, but his granddaughter is graduating from college, and I said, good for you.
Nice, yeah.
I think I sent everybody the email from his attorney and the purchase contract, I think, on June 7th. June 6th. So it is an offer of,
Rick, do we need to go in executive session?
Ken, sure.
I'll
We wanna
move
hold
to
it
go
to
in
the end.
executive.
Well. You wanna hold it to the.
Want to hold it to the end?
Yeah.
Okay. See the updates.
All right.
So I'll give an update on the outstanding projects we have right now. We have 2 active applications from Sunny's. This is in the town of Scipio and the town of Ledger. We've gone through the internal CBA with them, but it's been almost a month since we've heard back from them, and both Justin and I have touched base with them a couple of times. I'm not sure where they're stalling out at the moment. I think Justin, you speculated you might be having some further discussion with the town, but it's hard to say at the moment. Just a reminder, the size of those projects combined, it's in excess of 80 million. Yeah, I can't recall this specifically
Yeah,
there.
between the two of them, it's about that, it's
Yeah.
38 megawatts and, yeah, about 8
These are both solar projects.
Yeah, Ledyard and the other one,
Scipio.
Scipio.
So they're pretty good sized projects there, so hopefully we'll at least hear from them to kind of move forward one way or another with them or not. As it relates to solar projects, conference I was at recently had a rep from Lewis County, and they have a unique model where anyone who's coming in to do solar, they soil test the land. They send it over to water and soil. And based on how fertile the ground is what the IDA charges them. So if it's very good farmland, it's more expensive. If it's just on a landfill, it's pretty cheap. So I wasn't sure if it was something this IDA would like to entertain. And I know Justin, when I spoke with him about it, your work over in Wayne County and some of the other areas also have unique models.
They're doing the same thing, yeah,
And-
they're structuring it so. When the IDA closes on a pilot agreement in, Class A soils. And if especially if they're in an established district that's working for the ag and markets. They'll actually have, I think they're looking at a $5,000 per acre charge that the IDA would collect and get into soil and water. To help buy new easements and do preservation for ag. So it's a way to kind of work with the ag community, so the IDA is in a position where you're helping people take over ag land, you're kind of helping preserve it in a way, when it is being used.
My opinion is, no good farmland should go into solar. I've turned down $500,000 a year. I just can't do it.
I think we need
I
your
can't do
advice more now than we ever had before.
it. Absolutely right.
Especially on this solar thing. Some of the solar people are trying to get pilots from school districts. If they get a pilot from the school district, does the county have to abide by that pilot? Or can the county still charge the full taxes on it?
And that's the tension out there, instead of, and perhaps some of Norbit's strategy was to avoid having to pay the IDA for pilots. Okay, it's not the first time we've seen that. But when a developer engages with the school district, all the school district can do is exempt taxes for itself.
That
For 15 years, yeah.
really what my question is, so
Yeah.
the county could still charge the full amount of taxes, and the town could still charge the full.
Yeah.
Can you get the egg exemption?
No, once there's a commercial ground lease for a developer, that it kills the exemption, and in fact,
Yeah.
when that ground lease goes into effect, if the farmer, the owner of the farmland has had an ag exemption historically, the assessor is supposed to take the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And the developer.
That happens with the solar.
Yeah, the ground lease said the developer's got to eat that charge. So
The big project in Conquest. Now I'm talking like an expert, but I believe the Cato School District has hired 2 legal firms to probably fight that, because they're concerned that the person who is selling the land is going to have such a huge income that it's going to affect their aid program in the future. And so they're opposed to the whole solar program, not anything to do with the solar, but
But
to
you guy
keep,
won the lottery that time.
to keep from
Remember that?
somebody.
yeah,
There's all kinds of stuff that's
it's
coming
the
up with
tax
this.
cap.
that's
Yeah,
totally true, Justin.
their biggest concern is the impact of on the tax cap, and it's really arcane, and I know enough to be dangerous. But generally, the school district's biggest concerns typically are when a property goes from an IDA pilot or an exemption back to taxable. And when that occurs, they're getting more revenue. But in order to get that revenue as tax revenue, they need to jump up their tax, their tax levy. you gotta get to the same money. You're getting contract money, then you're going to tax money. So in the simplest way explained, it's called the growth factor as part of the 2% tax cap. It was supposed to be fixed in 2018, but Cuomo vetoed it. Because it was the jewel of his crown. It just passed both houses and there's a chance it's gonna get signed this year though. So it may take the air out of this balloon. But the problem is, you get to year 16 after the pilot's done and the property moves to the taxable rules. The town and the county can break the tax cap, no problem, just a resolution. But when the school district adopts its budget with a higher tax in it, in order to get to that revenue that they're entitled to. They may go from, their typical annual budget may have 1.5% increase on their levy. They gotta go to 15 that year. It's not like everybody's paying more taxes, it's just to match the revenue. So when that happens, they have to go to referendum. And about 22 people show up at a typical school board referendum and they vote no because they haven't been educated. They're worried about the wing on the school, that's a bond. Or the new school buses that may go down, and if they go to a contingency budget. That's where their fear is, and that's where the disconnect is. The contingency budget that is put in place if a school board budget goes down twice. There's a mandate that they go to a contingency
That is
budget.
on school board.
There's a cap on that, but it's a cap on spending,
Yep,
not on charging revenue. So all it really means is they can't be like drunken sailors, go spend this money, they just gotta stay in line on spending,
it would
so.
affect the state aid formula too, doesn't it?
A little bit, yeah, it may affect them, on a rateable the size of Conquest or, my phone's ringing. Or the size of the milk plant, something like right now, the existing milk plant sitting on the rolls around 32 million. This new one coming in might get hit at 50-60 million bucks.
Yeah.
After it's all said and done, so when that thing comes back on the rolls, it can really tip. I mean, Aurelius does have the mall and it has the across the street, it's got some big ratables. But it does move the needle a little bit when it comes back on, but if the governor approves what went through both houses this year. That problem's fixed for school districts, so they can kind of stop fighting IDAs a little bit, and we can all kind of fight on the same team a little bit. So I'm hoping that's.
One last question on this solar thing. There's a number of towns who are really taking a position that they do not want additional solar things in their town. Do we have the right and the authority to not grant a pilot just because we don't want to grant a pilot?
You treat every application as it comes at you. And it depends, if this is a town that has an articulated code or site plan or a statute in place for site plan and zoning. If they can't get through the town's planning process, they're not gonna be able to come through you, right?
So the town themselves
They can regulate it,
could be the bad guy and
Right.
deny.
except if you're in a very rural area that doesn't have a zoning code. And if they don't have a site plan regulation, all the solar companies are obligated to do is go get a building permit. Sometimes a special permit from the town, it really depends on what the town's laws are. But if you're way out in a rural area and they don't have a site plan regulation. The town might not have much control over it at all. And I've had situations in the North Country where the developer. Isn't getting much of a warm reception out of the town, so they ask the IDA to be secretly the agency for their project. And that gets the IDA a little sideways with, especially if they have a supervisor.
That do not have.
We have towns that don't have zoning ordinances, but almost all of our towns have solar. Standalone solar ordinances.
Okay.
And we're working on a couple more.
It's funny you mentioned that, we've updated, helped the town of Lafayette, Hastings, Lafayette. Basically hardened their solar ordinances over the last couple of years and making them heavy, basically.
Right, yeah, so in a perfect world, you're not in a position where you're being asked to help something that isn't. Like supported at the local level, you shouldn't have that problem, I don't think.
What is the last one I didn't? They come back. I
Yeah,
missed that.
so there was a small one over in Moravia and that was more community solar. They ended up rescinding their application.
Yeah, they were true, yeah.
And we, both us. And I reached out to them without, right, and we had pushed on them a couple of times.
I think they
but-
signed their labor contracts and there was no way that, and I'd suggested that even if their labor profile didn't look that great. if they could come to you and say, we're gonna give the fences to someone local, and we kind of dress it up a little bit, I guess they were comfortable going through the risk, so.
Steve?
I think the solar projects that Herb is talking about and that you might be talking about that haven't gotten back to you are relatively smaller. Solar projects. Keep in mind that anything over 20 megawatts. Can elect to go to the state siting board
Yeah.
and not go through any kind of local. Controls. They can still come to the IDA for a pilot.
Yeah.
But they will not get the authority to build through the locality.
Yeah.
And anything over 25 megawatts automatically goes to the state, which is the case you saw in Conquest.
Yeah, we're poised to see an application from them. I think they're working
We
on.
generally are aware of at least one more utility scale solar project, which I think might be over 200 megawatts. I'm not exactly sure because I haven't seen anything official, but I believe it's in the Venice.
Yeah.
So the town's really doing that.
And if it's in Venice, you know that it's most likely on prime.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else?
Take a look here, one other thing I wanted to mention here was just following up from. Kind of the site work we've been doing, we touched on this a little bit from the special meeting, there's ISAP and I, we started the letter of intent for the Baskin North application. For the property we spoke about north of Auburn here. I'm gonna share that around with the board and make sure everyone's okay with that before that's officially submitted. Once that goes in, then we'll just be waiting for the state to give us go, no go on that to do the actual application from there. But the two things I wanted to point out was the work that Steve Lynch's office did for the IDA in helping to really take a look at all these sites here. A number of them were shared with you at the last meeting that Marie Reeser had prepared. And I'll also be working with Justin on this grant in particular, as for knowledge of how we can work. Okay. We have reached out to Doug over at Soil and Water to get some drone footage done.
I haven't talked to him this week. I don't know if he's done it.
Okay,
He was gonna, he and Maureen were getting together.
yeah,
Jason was gonna go out and drone it.
yeah,
I talked to him about doing some site work, but at the last meeting, we talked about doing environmental study first.
right. Well, we also said we wanted to get the site work first. And then probably work with you, Mark, a bit, see if we could do a little preliminary work on that end. Last thing.
Doug did say that there was woods on it. I didn't really do what.
I talked to Doug, because I happened to be right out there anyway, and he was really interested and he wants absolute permission to walk on it before he does anything else, but he thinks that would be a good winter project for him, and that he would kind of organize the sale of what timber there is on that.
I didn't realize it was there.
Which could help pay for the cost of getting the thing ready to do. So if somebody could get him permission.
He seemed to be quite knowledgeable about the property.
Very knowledgeable and very interested in doing something.
He's a can-do guy. Anyway.
Awful good guy.
But first I wanted to get a drone to see what we had out there.
Yeah, and so.
And then I want to find out if there's contaminated soil around the old cement plant.
Yeah, so they do have a couple of reports they have done. I'll see if they could send them over to us. In the meantime, also working on getting formal permission from the owners, so we can have the land there. Again, we had discussed with them an option agreement, but the current property owner is very ill, so we don't really have any contact on what they
I
might.
graduated with his brother.
Okay. Yeah. So that's, it doesn't mean we're still not taking a look over at other interested parcels as well, so.
Did Morgan's, was Morgan just a foreman or was he part owner or what? Remember Dave Morgan?
Of what? Of the milk plant,
Yeah, of the cement, of
the
this,
cement plant, or the
No,
silo thing? I don't think so.
he was like, he was way up high with that.
Yes, but I think the Estelle family kept complete ownership.
Okay. I think he was the road there and just dealt. I didn't know if he ended up with some ownership with it.
I don't think so. I think the Estelle's
Yeah.
total ownership. They've been very, very, very difficult to do.
Oh, absolutely.
If they wanted, whatever price it was, by the time you had some interest in it, they doubled the price. You never, ever could get any price for them, but the family situation has changed. Maybe they're ready to do something now.
Anything else?
No, those are the big highlights, and I think Justin, you know. For our discussion with CMI, we'll probably really get started on those negotiations over the next couple of weeks, I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll dig right into it.
Yep.
I think that $5,000 fee for the prime land on the solar would be a great interest.
Yeah. Do you have a local farm board that's appointed by our county? Is
Yeah.
there a district board? They would go to their operations or their.
You got farmland, right?
Yeah, on protection board.
Yeah,
Yeah, they would be very interesting.
I was on it way back.
I'm on it now.
You guys looking for easements and you're looking to preserve, is that part of the programming with state money or?
Overall, we're looking to preserve as much farmland as we can.
So,
We also have a county, farmland protection plan that the legislature adopted.
That would help diminish.
The
trash
objections to them, yeah.
Sell that.
so focus on what you can keep.
The motion going executive session. for-
I'll move.
Acquisition of land. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.